Ciao a tutti e bentornati. Welcome to Italy Made Easy. My name is Manu and I am your host for today. Today, this is a video number 2 on a very difficult and important topic, and that is if you've been studying Italian or any language for more than a year, or sometimes 2 or 3, and you feel like you're not really that good, watch the previous video because I told you about the top 5 mistakes that I think you may be making. You are making them. I was. Come on, everybody does. That's okay. But let's stop doing those things. In this video, I'm going to instead be proactive and give you some tips or suggestions on how you could use your time in a better way. So let's get started. Now, the first thing is time. How much time have you been dedicating to this language that you're learning? I'm going to use Italian for ease of conversation because this channel is about Italian, but really any language. If you've been dedicating less than 3 hours a week, that's probably why you are still not very good. Now, in the previous video, I talked about things like Duolingo or Rosetta Stone. If you feel that you're doing something good by spending 10 minutes on Duolingo a day, that's fine, but don't expect that that will make you learn a language. It does take time to pick up a language. Look at your native language. How big is it? Like, seriously, how big is your language? And of course, we only use a small percentage of our own language, but how much language do you use when you speak? You use a lot. And it didn't take you 10 minutes a day to learn it. So you have to be realistic about the time that you invest in learning a language. Now, 3 hours sounds like a lot. It's not really a lot. I mean, if you could do 1 hour every other day, there you go, you've got your 3 hours. It's not a huge commitment. Now, if you can't do this, you could do half an hour a day. Now, we are talking about focused study, okay? We're not talking about I play music in the background while I cook. That's extra time, okay? So, time. Be realistic about the time that you put in, and I highly recommend that you put in at least 3 hours a week of active language learning. Then, grammar. That's a big thing. So, it's really hard to give everybody suggestions because I don't know what your current level is. I don't know, there's so many factors that go in deciding what the best study plan would be. So, this is a very generic one. If you've been studying for more than a year, in my opinion, you should have been exposed to pretty much all the grammar that you need to be exposed to. So you don't need to spend your 3 hours doing grammar. If you don't feel, and I know you're gonna say I don't feel that, but because we all obsess with grammar as grown-ups, but if you feel that you still need to spend time on grammar, do not spend more than half an hour of your 3 hours on it. If you feel that you're really lacking in grammar, then go ahead and use an hour, but I'm going to make your study time 4 hours instead of 3. Just saying, okay? I'll come back to the grammar and why I recommend such little time spent on grammar. 3, listening. I want you to be listening to real language. So if you're learning Italian, I want you to be actively listening to Italian language. Not those artificial dialogues. I'm talking about real, authentic language. Italians talking to Italians. So how do you do that? Well, for Italian, you're lucky. I have a series called Italian Accelerator. It's still an educational course, but in that series, there's me chatting in Italian to an Italian friend, and we don't care about you. As in, we're just talking to each other, so we speak very natural. But this is an educational tool, but what I'm talking about is actually exposing yourself to Italian or to the language that you're studying in the most authentic way. So the way I do it for my languages is with podcasts and with YouTube videos. Not language podcasts, not language YouTube videos, okay? I am into a few things, so for podcasts, I listen to cinema podcasts. So, for example, I listen to a couple of I listened to a podcast in Portuguese and one in Spanish, where they talk about the latest movies or TV releases, and they just talk and talk and blah, blah. Why is cinema so good? You may not be into cinema, it doesn't matter. The reason cinema is good is that when you have a podcast of people speaking about cinema, first of all, their interaction with each other is the current language. So they speak like people do, they speak like friends do. So there's a little bit of slang, there's a little bit of vocabulary that is not even in the dictionary because it hasn't even entered the dictionary, but that's what they are using in that country. You want to pick it up. But then when they start talking about the stories, the language that is usually used to tell a movie is very simple, because in most cases they only use the present tense really. In Italian we do, I know in Spanish they do, so it's like saying, and then she walks into a shop and she buys a shirt. It's all in the present tense, so it's actually not as hard as you think. But then after they told the story, then they comment, and it's amazing. It's really useful for you to listen to people commenting on things, because that's what we do in real life. We talk about stuff. So I find watching podcasts or listening to podcasts on cinema is really helpful, but if you're not into cinema, it's fine. Find something else. On YouTube, I watch a lot of cooking shows in the language that I'm practicing. I watch things on nutrition, things of fitness, things of personal development, because these are the things that I care about. So I know the vocabulary in my language, obviously, and I know what they're likely to be saying in the foreign language that I want to practice. And so I learn that way. I want you to be spending 90 minutes of your 3 hours, that's half of your time, because I'm telling you to not even include grammar in your 3 hours. Half of your time, spend it listening to actual native speakers speaking the language, not language courses. That's if you've been studying for 1 or 2 years already and you feel stuck. If you're at the beginning, this advice is not for you, obviously. The whole video is not for you if you've been studying for less than a year or two. Speaking, I want you to be spending another 90 minutes, which is the other half of your time, speaking the language that you're studying. I don't know anybody. There's this video here to help you with that. Okay, so let's not make excuses. If we want to become fluent in a language, we have to find a way. We don't have to find excuses, because we have an abundance of those. I'll say we because I'm with you, okay? I'm with you. The reason I'm talking to you is that I have been able to become fluent in the languages that I am fluent, English, Spanish, and Portuguese. I can express any emotion or anything I want in those languages, even though I lack some vocabulary, even though sometimes I make grammar mistakes. But I still consider myself fluent because I can sit down and have a full-on conversation with anybody on any topic. That's where you want to be with your language, right? So that's why I hope you're watching this video. So 90 minutes of speaking. How? There are language exchange platforms. Again, this time does not include language lessons. If you're doing language lesson, that's on top of the 3 hours that I'm recommending, okay? This is you speaking random stuff with people. So if you have a friend native of the language you're learning, go buy them a coffee and talk about whatever. Okay, if you are using a language exchange platform like Speaky, which is the one I recommend, but there are other ones, then talk, you know, hey, how are you going? Oh, nice haircut. Oh, what's that thing in the background? Oh, what do you like doing? Oh, tell me about it. Speak to native speakers of the language. 90 minutes, that sounds like a lot. It's not. Again, it's 3 half-an-hour sessions. We have half an hour to learn something that we really want to learn. If we don't, maybe we don't want to learn it as bad. This is like people saying, I want to get fit, but I don't have time. Hold on, no. If you really want to get fit, you find the time. You watch one less show on TV, you eat a little bit faster maybe, or you wake up half an hour earlier, you find the time to exercise if you're really wanting it. If you just like to say that you're exercising, that you would exercise, that you would lose weight, that's a different story. It's the same for languages. I'm sorry if I'm sounding harsh, but that's the reality of language learning. I've fallen into this trap myself of saying I'm learning such and such language, but really I wasn't putting in the time, and I wasn't making the time that I could have made if I really wanted it. So let's not lie to each other and to ourselves saying that we are wanting to learn Italian if we're not willing to find the time. Half an hour, can you find half an hour to talk to an Italian speaker? If you have, okay, here's another option. No, I'm not going to show you, but do you have WhatsApp? WhatsApp is an app that you can download on your phone, and if you have Italian or friends that you've met through your travels, and maybe they're the reason why you're wanting to learn that language, get in touch with them. All you need is their phone number, and you can leave each other voice messages. It's not the same as conversation, but it's almost the same. Okay, so if you feel that fear of speaking to strangers, there's another way. There are so many ways, only limited to our imagination, okay? Like I said in this video, go to the local deli where you can find Italians or whatever language you're learning and talk to them, order in their language. Okay, so 90 minutes of listening, 90 minutes of speaking. So how about vocabulary and grammar, Emmanuel? Emmanuel, that's me, Manu. You do those in your downtime. Okay, so what do I mean? Well, if you want to use Duolingo or Rosetta Stone, sure, do it. Do it while you're waiting for the bus. Do your Duolingo session in the bathroom, or do it while you're waiting for somebody to get ready to go out. Okay, so that's the downtime that I would suggest you use to learn your vocabulary, because vocabulary is essential, and you know how much I love vocabulary. But you shouldn't be using your time to only do vocabulary, because that's not enough. It shouldn't be the focus of your language learning, right? So, as you're listening to your podcast, this is the way that's how I do it. If I'm listening to a podcast in Spanish, for example, and I hear something, I don't know what that means. I pause the podcast. We have telephone. That's where we're listening to the podcast, probably. And I just go on wordreference.com. I enter Spanish to English, and I enter the Spanish word that I heard and see what that means. And now I've learned a new word, and go back to the podcast, press play, and keep going. It's the same if you're talking to a native speaker. If you're speaking and they say something you don't know, you will ask, oh, sorry, I don't know what that means. They will explain what that means, hopefully in that language, not in English. And then you have learned a new word. And it's the same for grammar. If you pay attention to a podcast and you realize that they're saying something, maybe they're using an imperfetto to talk about something, and you wouldn't have used an imperfetto, well, then you pause and say, okay, why are they using the imperfetto? Okay, now you have kind of expanded your knowledge of the grammar without having to read a grammar book. Okay, another simple example. If you weren't sure about the Italian articles, because we have so many, well, if you listen to Italians speaking Italian, you will hear them using lo as the article on so many occasions that at some point you will just know, okay, that's how law works. So I had doubts, but now you shouldn't have problems with the articles, obviously, otherwise your 1 year of studying hasn't been very productive, okay? But that was just an example. So you are going to learn the vocabulary and the grammar in your downtime, either when you're killing time, really waiting for people or stuff like that, or it's on top of your 3 hours while you're doing your 90 minutes of listening to podcasts, for example, or watching YouTube videos. Well, you pause and you look up things that you are not sure about, and by listening to the native speakers use their native language, you also perfect your grammar. Then, if you come to a point where you hear something, it's a grammar point that you're not sure about, okay, look it up. 10 minutes, open your grammar book. In 10 minutes, you read that page, you look at the examples, maybe you even do the exercise. Done. Do not live for grammar, please. And I'm sorry if this video was a little bit too long and I sounded preachy, but this is, okay, I'll tell you why this is happening. Years ago, I was planning a trip to Japan. I decided that I would teach myself Japanese. Now, luckily, because of my profession as an academic, I do have more time than most people. So I decided that I would spend 4 hours a day learning Japanese for a month. So that was going to be 120 hours. That's a lot of time. Now, of course, I wasn't going to get fluent in a month, but I believed I could get to a good point. I made a huge mistake, because I was so, grown up, I thought that I should learn not only how to read the kanji, like the characters, and how to actually draw them. I wanted to know how to read them, draw them, and all those things, and it takes time to perfect a kanji. You have to do the strokes in the right order. So basically 2 hours of my daily time spent on Japanese, I actually spent on kanji learning. That was totally a waste of time. Because when I went to Japan, oh look, it was useful on 2 occasions that I knew what a kanji meant, because I can look at something, oh, that's what it means. But overall, I wish I had spent all the entire 4 hours learning how to communicate with Japanese people and how to say things that I would need to say, and most of all, learn how to understand when they spoke to me. And I didn't do that because I spent 4 hours, like I said, 2 hours doing kanji and drawing and memorizing stroke order and stuff like that, and then 2 hours learning the grammar. How much time do you think I spoke Japanese while I was while I was trying to learn Japanese? To a human, never. For a whole month, it was just me teaching myself Japanese. I didn't speak a single word to anybody. I have friends who are Japanese and I could have used them, but I know I was too shy because, my Japanese is not good. I can't talk to anybody. So 0 time spent speaking, some time spent listening, but obviously, as a beginner, the listening is a bit limited because you don't understand a lot. I could have used the scripted dialogues that I was trashing before, but as a beginner, you should use them, obviously. They have a place. And yeah, so when I went to Japan, I got by because, I did spend a good amount of time learning Japanese, but I could have been so much better off. And this is only like 6 years ago. And by that time, I was already a linguist, I was already a translator, I was already a language teacher, and I was already fluent in 3 foreign languages. If you're interested in my language learning journey, I'm about to record a video that has been on my list for a long time, and it's the language tag. So it's a personal video where I share my experience with languages, and hopefully that helps you or inspires you, or gives you some perspective. Anyway, grazie mille for paying attention. Again, sorry if I was harsh in this video and in the previous one. I'm just trying to get the message across that if you want to do it, you can. There are no limitations to how good you can become in a foreign language. There are limitations because, like I said, you may never sound like a native. You will always make grammar mistakes. But in terms of you feeling confident with a language, it's totally doable. It does take time and some strategy. And I hope I shared a strategy with you that works. Ciao, ciao, grazie.